All right, we're there. So, hello, my name is Colin. Welcome to episode 4 of Roll by Roll's Tavern Talk, a show where we, the Roll by Roll gang, discuss various aspects of running a great D&D campaign based on our experiences with D&D 5e and our current adventures in Emathan campaign. Joining me tonight are the rest of our current Roll by Roll crew. So we have Barry, who plays Nightingale and Landis. And we have Egan, who plays Douglin and Lafferty. Welcome, gentlemen.
Hey, how's it
So with
going?
that, let's get right into today's topic. So during the past month or so, Egan and I have been working through a crafting system that would allow his character Lafferty to create ammunition for his sling weapon. Part of that discussion included when this crafting could take place. That led all of us into a discussion around downtime, something that we haven't yet had in our campaign, and when or if we should start looking at incorporating it, which I think we've all agreed we certainly need to soon.
Yes.
So, with that ongoing discussion in mind, we thought that tonight we would discuss downtime and how that can be used in your campaign. So I'm going to start off, gents, with a little definition of downtime. Now, you can find information on downtime in the player's handbook starting page 187. It's in the Dungeon Master's Guide starting on page 127. It's in Acquisitions Incorporated, starting on page 34, which is some material I personally haven't had an opportunity to get into too far. And then it's in Xanathar's Guide to Everything. So much like Xanathar's did with crafting, Xanathar's Guide sort of rewrote the mechanics around downtime. And so I'm going to read that particular section just to use as sort of our definition here. So, downtime revisited. It's possible for a character to start a campaign at first level, dive into an epic story, and reach 10th level and beyond in a short amount of game time. Although that pace works fine for many campaigns, excuse me, some DMs prefer a campaign story with pauses built into it, times when the adventurers are not going on adventures. The downtime rules given in this section can be used as alternatives to the approach in the player's handbook and the Dungeon Master's Guide, or you can use the material here to inspire the creation of your own options, something we'll talk about later. By engaging the characters in downtime activities that take weeks or even months to complete, you can give your campaign a longer timeline, one in which events in the world play out over years. Wars begin and end, tyrants come and go, and royal lines rise and fall over the course of the story that you and the characters tell. Downtime rules also provide ways for characters to spend, or be relieved of, the monetary treasures they amass on their adventures. The system presented here consists of two elements. First, it introduced the concept of rivals, which was something that wasn't in the player's handbook or Dungeon Master's Guide. And second, it details a number of downtime activities that the characters can undertake. And so we will look at that a little further. So really, downtime is between the DM and the players. You determine some sort of activity that you would like to partake in. You figure out the cost, you figure out the time, and you figure out the mechanic that's going to be required to determine the outcome. Basically, whether that activity was successful or not, how successful or how really terribly bad it went. So moving into why would players want to have their character engage in downtime activity? Egan, why don't you kick us off on your thoughts around why players would want to have their character engage in downtime activity?
I'm going to steal Barry's line. Why wouldn't they? It
Good
is
line.
Yes, he nailed it, and I'm going to steal it unashamedly. Why wouldn't they? It is a fantastic time to develop the character in ways that normal gameplay, normal RP cannot do. There are class features, there are race features that the only way to tap into those would be sort of a longer arcing storyline. For example, an espionage trip. The assassin has skills that are specific for that type, but how do you run that where they infiltrate? I mean, they can't be done over a day or two, or if so, that sort of that's just part of a normal gameplay. But with the downtime activities, you're able to tap into so many other things that characters normally would not. A lot of the backgrounds that are out there are based on downtime activity, like what they did before they became a PC that you played. So, but in a word, why wouldn't they?
Yeah, absolutely. Barry, your thoughts?
Yeah, like downtime is the perfect opportunity to draw out the game and to world build. Like it's very easy, and Xanathar's really touched on the effect of going from zero to hero within a couple months. You've started off at level 1 and you go through these few adventures, and all of a sudden you're level 10 in no time. It's been 5 weeks and you're just like, oh, okay, that was a rush. Where when you introduce downtime, and there's a time and a place for it, of course, but we'll get into that. You allow your world to build. You can add some depth to your character that normally you don't have the opportunities. Like Egan had suggested, your rogue. You might be in a party that frowns upon certain activities, where that's where you use that downtime to go off and do that stuff. But another great opportunity with downtime is it allows your characters to get that experience of how they're affecting the world. So as I was speaking with you guys before we fired up the old filmography machine we use here to record, uh, my rogue introduces himself everywhere we go, but as we begin to grow in levels, that's going to become an issue when he's going off and wants to do some, you know, less up and up activities. Being renowned as you go up levels will come into play, but you don't really get to experience that unless you're doing those downtime activities where you're just going off something other than the adventure. So it creates a lot of depth in your world. It helps you create a lot of depth in your characters. As a group, it begins to create bonds that aren't necessarily there during the game. So two of your characters go off and have this wicked little adventure, and they start to begin this friendship that might be a little harder to do if you didn't have downtime.
Yes, I absolutely agree with all of that. In doing my research for this, one of the articles I read had a good little list. It was by Teos Abadia. He has a blog called Alpha Stream, which I read quite often. And, I think his list here sort of encompasses some of the stuff you're talking about. He said here, downtime activities can be used to pursue both individual and collective goals, secure information and resources, influence, bolster, or hinder organizations, expand the party's base of operations, step away from the scripted feel of published adventures, which is something we experienced in Storm King's Thunder and utilized. Shine a light on the backstory and other normally offstage narratives. Now, in our campaign, we do bring a lot of backstory into it, but it does, sort of to what you spoke to, Egan, there's a lot of backstory that happened before we got into the lives of these characters that you can expand on even further, and then just allow for lots more collaborative storytelling, where they may not have these stories may not happen on stage, they may happen off stage, but it still adds to the whole story
Yeah,
overall, right?
definitely.
Yeah, so lots. I mean, obviously, lots of really good reasons why you'd want your characters to engage in downtime activities. I know for our campaign, we've talked about we definitely need to bring downtime into it. For myself as a DM, downtime is not something that I utilized much in the past. So it's thinking about the opportunities. Um, I have to really force myself to remember to find opportunities with the system that we utilized for Lafferty creating his ammunition. We looked for basically small downtime opportunities because instead of
Quick and dirty.
needing 8 hours a day to work on this over multiple days, it's really something that could be achieved in a small period of time, which sort of leads us into the next question: when can downtime occur? Egan, thoughts on that? When can you do downtime?
Yeah, I mean, I think the theme always is and will be is communication with your DM, or as a DM, communication with your PCs. And if you are, using a out of the box adventure, then working together to find places during it. Obviously, if you have a homebrew, the DM has a lot more control about the narrative. So I think, we may have one coming up. But to digress, the more I think about downtime, the more excited I've been getting because of the opportunities. But when downtime can happen, there's lots of things. You could be traveling on a caravan. So instead of, just a quick airship that takes 8 hours, you're going to be on a caravan for a month, or an ocean travel couple of months. Now, those obviously may kind of pigeonhole you into what you can do, right? It has to make sense. Like, you're on a ship, you can't be a pit fighter, or maybe you can. Maybe you fight the entire crew, who knows? But you would have to get creative there. If there's an opportunity, let's say something needs to grow, a harvest needs to happen, if you will, not to foreshadow too much, then that might also be an opportunity where a rare occurrence, you split the party by design. We've got 4 characters going right now from vastly different backgrounds. And if they are not urgently trying to solve other people's problems, they're probably going to go figure out their own, or at least advance some of their narrative. Those are some of the things that, you can work in. Also, like, if I may, going back to it, there's races that literally live for 1,000 years, and if we're just going to play them for a very short window, it just doesn't seem like. I think there's a lot that you can get out of that. So but those would be some of the times that you could get some downtime in.
Yeah, absolutely. Barry, your thoughts?
Yeah, you raised some good points there with the longer live races and how important downtime can be to really encompassing that feel. Like when you live 250 years, but you play 6 months of that character and then he's retired, it makes for a little weird experience. But as to when your group can bring in downtime, I think that's really a conversation the group needs to have about the pacing style they enjoy. If you're a group that likes to go 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 go, downtime's not going to be something you guys even think about, and we played that way for a really long time. But you know think about the style of game you guys are playing. If you're in an open sandbox world, like it's going to be a little more based on the narrative that's going on of when those downtimes can happen and when they fit. And again, that'll be somewhere where the DM might be like, oh, I kind of want to slow the pace down a little, so I'm going to give them a couple weeks downtime. And for the DM, that's looking at your overarching plot and figuring out where's a good time. I need this to happen before they get there, so I need some time for that to happen. So the DM can throw downtime in there, and then on a character side, communicating with the DM and being like, we're wrapping up finding the sickle of the harvest moon. Can we maybe take a couple weeks with the druids and I kind of want to do some research in this spell. So it's something where you really got to find the fit and the placement within your own campaign and your own gaming style. And I think that's when you find that harmony, it might take a little while. Like for us, we're just getting into it, but I think once we find that synergy of when to place downtime, it's really going to be more of an exciting element to the game where you've got all these different things going on, and maybe you create a nemesis because of your downtime that's now thwarting your plans in this adventure that you are starting. So it's a lot of communication again, which we always touch on, but it's finding the right fit for your campaign.
Could I also
Yeah.
mention something too? And what it means, like we get together weekly. Downtime could literally be between one session and the next. So I think it's important to explain that this isn't actual play downtime although we're going to be a month from now, but where I'm going with this is like this literally can be between a session, right? As long
Yes.
as you communicate and you prepare for it, and Colin lets the players know, okay, guys, after next session, which I think we're going to accomplish this, there's going to be X amount of days, weeks, months where there's downtime. So then as a PC, you can prepare your goals, present them, work it out with the DM. I think we'll get into the mechanics of, roles that will allow or not allow you to achieve what you want. But that's something to keep in mind. It's not a break for 6 months of playing. It's just an in-between mechanic between sessions, if you will.
Yeah, I that's a good point to make there, because for anybody that's not familiar with downtime, you might think, well, the characters want to take a month off. Does that mean we take a month off? Nope, this is not real-time play. From my standpoint as the DM, and as I mentioned, I hadn't really been considering downtime. It is something the DM has to be thinking about, especially if you have a lot of storyline that is progressing in a certain way and has some sort of timeline attached to it. You have to keep that in mind as you're looking to present opportunities to the party to have some downtime. So we're approaching, we're approaching what we think it will be a good opportunity to have some downtime. As we get closer to it, we'll figure out what makes sense in terms of a timeline. But you can pretty much have downtime anywhere the party has the sufficient funds to pay for whatever they want to do. There's a sufficient amount of time to do whatever it is. So say they want to craft something, and also the opportunity, right? So you need to be in the right place to do the activity. If you get to some small little hamlet and your character wants to do some serious espionage, and about the best thing they're going to figure out in that hamlet is who's been stealing whose pigs, right? Like you got to make sure, depending on what the activity is, the where you are, is an important part of being able to do that opportunity. And that's where I think as a DM, you need to start having the conversations of what do you think you might like to do if we're able to offer up some downtime coming up soon, and you can start working through those details. And that's another important thing for people to realize about downtime is, generally speaking, you should work through downtime between sessions. So, let's just say for our group, next session, we get an opportunity to present a month of downtime, and then we're playing the following week. During that week, we should be working through everything that occurred. So how much gold did it take? How much time did it take? Having already figured out the mechanics, what was the outcome of the activity? So when we come back into session, what I would really ask each member, each player in the group is recap your downtime activity for the rest of the group. What you would have shared with them when you got back together. And I mean, depending on the group, that may be nothing. Oh, I just spent the whole week doing nothing, when, maybe they've got themselves into all kinds of trouble and stirred up all kinds of bad news, right?
Yeah.
But it's important for people to realize that, generally speaking, you deal with downtime outside of your sessions. That all of that gets sorted out outside of the session, and you just come back, and a month has gone by since you were last playing live. Last thing we'll talk about here is what can be done during downtime. So what are some of the activities? Now I'm just going to blaze through a list here. It is a lot of the stuff that comes out of Xanathar's. So there's items, activities, sorry, like buy a magic item, carousing, crafting an item, crime, gambling, pit fighting, relaxation, religious service, research, scribing a spell scroll, selling a magic item, training, work. I mean, you could work during that time, if you have or you could even start a business, build a stronghold, gain renown, perform sacred rites, run a business, sow rumors. So those are just some of the ideas that you can do. But Egan, thoughts on the kind of things you can do during downtime?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing to mention is that the big point of downtime is the reward. We're just going after it a little bit differently than slaying a goblin, right? The whole point of these activities is to get a tangible reward. It could be anything from gold to renown, to a business, to a relationship, to access to information. You could even put it to where they gain a feat that is, not so much leveling up, but something like, let's say I'm going to take 3 months and become a chef. I'm going to study under the best chef in the kingdom. They've given me an apprenticeship. I get the chef feat. Like, you could reward that. So as far as, some of the things that I was thinking about, a druid, for example, comes across a desolate land, and their goal is to nurture it and to bring it back into, a flourishing forest. I mean, that's not something that happens overnight. That is a goal. It could be month, it could even be a year that it takes. We talked about, like, a ranger is charged with clearing out a forest and making it safe, or creating it as its own domain. There's a lot of things. A monk goes on a pilgrimage, or a paladin goes on a pilgrimage, things of that nature, outside of the topics that you mentioned. But at the end of the day, it's for the reward, right? That's why we want to do this, and sort of create more things for the character that makes them more dynamic, and just getting better at what they do in a very fun way. As I said, the more I look at this downtime, the more excited I am about doing it. But I will blame the artificer. This is the first time we played an artificer, and man, I tell you, you got to get creative with an artificer in the group. Their potential is not realized unless they get downtime. It is impossible for them to create a magic item in a lot of these game time frames. It just doesn't happen. So I'm very excited that you're allowing this, and I think it's a really cool thing.
Yeah, Barry, thoughts?
So I just want to make sure that everybody understands that with what is capable, the where it's happening and what you're capable are directly linked. Like, I think you mentioned it, Colin. You're not going to be down in a dungeon and craft a magic item because you're going to spend a week down in that dungeon downtime because you're lost and just want to take a break. So where you are will definitely determine what you can do. The amount of time will determine what you can do. But as far as things you can do, the sky's the limit. Your imagination and your creativity for your character, and your willingness as a DM to say, yeah, let's go for that, You name it, you can do it. But one of the interesting things I think would be very interesting is as a dungeon master, using downtime to plant seeds of intrigue for your characters. So we come across like Nightingale forever has this piece of paper with this name on it, and he wants to find this person. That's a clue the DM has left him, and you just leave it at that, and it's up to the character to decide whether or not they want to investigate this in their downtime. So it's an opportunity for DMs to plant clues and secrets within the game that characters can latch onto, whether they're real or not, and go searching for them. It's just creates all of these opportunities for these amazing things to happen, where you want your character to start a religion. If you're a cleric, well, off he goes to build his temple and start creating his followers. If you're a fighter, well, I think it was Tasha's Cauldron of Everything that touched on retraining and things like that, and using downtime for those opportunities. And I was talking about Egan, like maybe you're in a party where you've got 4 people that have Arcana as a skill. Well, maybe one of them's like, well, how about I drop that and take a skill we need, like, and so I'm going to retrain, or we find we really need someone to be able to use thieves tools because we don't got one in the party. Well, one of your guys decides to take 3 or 4 months, and he's not going to get a class in rogue, but he just wants to pick up how to use thieves tools. So there's an opportunity for you to add that creativity and skill onto a character in a time frame. Like you said, in the game, you're never going to be able to learn to do a skill. And I think we really found that kind of limiting when we were playing the Storm King's Thunder campaign. It all moves across so quickly. One of our characters was trying to learn Elvish. I think it was Flint trying to learn Elvish from Thanos. And, like we'd all, like there's a difference between overland travel time and downtime. Like the few days you have on the back of a horse going from point A to point B is not downtime. They're two different things. And so, we were trying to be it so that Flint could learn Elvish but we never really had the time to do it. Where if you introduce downtime, maybe you could learn a new language. So again, the sky's the limit to what you want to do, and everybody can kind of throw ideas out there and see what comes out in the end.
Yeah, absolutely. Good points, guys. And it really is. I mean, the sky's the limit. It just anything you decide you want to do, and I'll reiterate this again. As long as you have the funds, the time, and the opportunity. So whether that is the time of year, the place you are, as long as those pieces are there, the players and the DM can work out any sort of downtime activity you want. Like you can decide you're gonna find yourself a wife and get married and have kids, and you decide because you've all got long living races that you take 100 years off within the game, right?
Go carousing.
Carousing for
all the humans
years.
Are dead, but hey, in the party,
you definitely need some long-lived races to. But and again, to go back to my previous statements, what's important there is the DM needs to be careful then about the storyline, and can it hold itself together over the length of time that the party may. If there's a big war going on that the party is involved in, well, you can't take 100 years off to go have a family and children, because when you come back, the war is over, right? So, yeah, So that's sort of our. Go ahead.
We never touched on the mechanic involved. Did we want to?
So the mechanics vary depending on the type. Should we go through an example, or I think we're getting pretty close to our 30 minutes. I mean, what I would suggest in getting examples of how the mechanics could work is look at the material in Unearthed Arcana. Each one of the ideas that are in Unearthed Arcana goes into detail on the kind of time, money, mechanics, the possibilities of rivals coming out of it, bad outcomes, all that kind of stuff.
It's a good tool.
yeah, it gives you a really good idea of how then you could go back and build your own downtime activity and the mechanics and such that would be required out of that.
A good
There's
set
a
of
good
building
shout
blocks.
out. Yeah, just a shout out to, I think it's called D&D Dudes. They have a downtime activities and they kind of break it down cost. They break it into like sets of 10 days, how much GP, and then some suggestions on types of roles that you can do and how you improve it the longer you put towards it or the more money you put towards it. And they have, you know, from carousing to crafting an item, crime. They're basically putting down, here's how you can do crime. Here's, you know, but there again, get creative. You know, if you're building a magic item, you do have a formula, right? There is a formula. This is the
Yeah.
what I want to make. It's all mapped out for you. It's the more ambiguous things like what is espionage? Work with the DM, right? You may not need to spend a lot. You just need an outfit, but you might need, you know, papers, and you might need to bribe somebody to make those papers. So there is a way to come up with a formula that makes sense in the time and, as you said, the opportunity.
Yeah. All right, to wrap things up here, Barry, any last thoughts around downtime? An activity I believe that we're all in agreement we will be partaking in.
If you haven't introduced downtime in your game, it is definitely something worth looking into. As you can tell from all of us, the excitement is, you know, you can see it in us about this opportunity to add this whole depth to the game that we didn't have there before. And yeah, read it, check it out, decide if you want it in your game. It's not for everyone.
Egan, last thoughts?
Yeah, very excited about introducing this. I know we've tried with the chat, which is fantastic. That's more campfire talk, which has again added a new level of character immersion. This, I think, is going to take it and really just kind of like polish everything up. Like skills are going to be to make sense and attainable. You're going to dust off some of those benefits you get from background classes that you never use in game. And that's what we try to do. I mean, these are there for a reason, and I think it would be a lot of fun to be able to use them.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, as I mentioned today, Egan, when you and I were talking about this, downtime's a great tool for players to use for character development, you know, to really expand their character beyond a spell caster or a sword swinger, you know, and really build on their character. And it's an equally great tool for the DM to use for campaign development because, Barry, back to what you said, you can plant so many little seeds during the downtime, and then whatever the party thinks is great, you can work with and go forward.
Yep.
Anything can be accomplished during downtime. You know, it just needs a little prep work between the DM and the players. So, you know, I'm sure it's something that will. I know it's something that I will be much more aware of as we go forward in finding the opportunities for us to do that. And so, gentlemen, with that, I guess we'll make that a wrap for episode 4 of Roll by Roll's Tavern Talk.
Woohoo!
We hope that everyone enjoyed tonight's topic. Tavern Talks occur on the Thursday after each of our Saturday night Adventures in Emathan sessions. Our next session is scheduled, try and hold yourselves together, guys, for Thursday, September 15th. Unfortunately, about a month away.
We took downtime. We didn't really understand it.
Wait, we're running real-time downtime. For those of you watching on YouTube, please support us by making sure to like our videos and subscribe to the channel. Hit that little bell icon so you can be alerted when the next session occurs. So to end episode, as we always do, we'll offer a cheers. Thanks for joining us in the tavern, and we hope that you'll be able to join us next time. Cheers everyone.